namely familiarity. They do fit into that category. I've given a couple of examples, and if there's time, I'll return to more. Literally, the current U.S.-Israeli invasion falls under the category of terrorism, at least according to the U.S. official definition of the word, but that does not capture the enormity of the crime. It cannot be called aggression, and the reason is that it's taking place in occupied territory. That's accepted in the West tacitly, and it's basically beyond question. It's recognized by Israeli scholarship. So the most important case I know is the one and only comprehensive scholarly history of Israeli settlement in the occupied territories. It's been translated now into English, called Lords of the Land by Edith Zertel and Akiva Eldar. They point out that, quote, after Israel withdrew its forces from Gaza in August 2005, the ruined territory was not released for even a single day from Israel's military grip or from the price of the occupation that the inhabitants pay every day. Israel left behind scorched earth, devastated services, and people with neither a present nor a future. The settlements were destroyed, the Jewish settlements, in an ungenerous move by an unenlightened occupier, which in fact continues to control the territory and kill and harass its inhabitants by means of its formidable military might, which is exercised with extraordinary savagery, always with firm U.S. support and participation. Crucial fact for us, even before the latest onslaught. The U.S.-Israeli assault on Gaza escalated in January 2006, a few months after the formal withdrawal, because Palestinians committed a real crime. They voted the wrong way in a free election, and that's a serious crime. They have to learn that, like others, easy to add examples, that there's a cost to disobeying the commands of the master, who incidentally continues to prate about his yearning for democracy without eliciting ridicule from the educated classes, which is quite an achievement of our educational and cultural system, one of many. Well, since terrorism, the terms terrorism and aggression are inadequate, some new term is needed for the sadistic and cowardly torture of people who are caged with no possibility of escape, while they're being pounded daily by the most sophisticated products of U.S. military technology, provided in the certain knowledge that this is how they'll be used. It happens to be in direct violation of U.S. law, of course, also international law, but for self-declared outlaw states, that's just another minor technicality, so there's no need to comment on it. Just how serious these weapons are remains to be completely verified. They apparently include white phosphorus, according to Human Rights Watch, which is another violation of the laws of war and who knows what else. One of the heroic volunteers in Gaza, a Norwegian doctor, Maud Gilbert, describes his sense of horror as an all-out war goes on against the civilian population of Gaza. He estimates that half the casualties are women and children. The men who are killed are also civilians by any reasonable legal standards, almost all. He says that he has scarcely seen a military casualty among the hundreds of shredded bodies, but that's in accord with the Gur Eben principles, which I mentioned, and in fact with consistent practice. His estimate is confirmed by the UN humanitarian chief, John Holmes, who informed reporters that it's a fair presumption that most of the civilians killed were women and children in a humanitarian crisis that is worsening day by day as the violence continued. Those who don't like that story can be comforted by the words of Tzipi Livni, who's the leading dove in the electoral system, who assured the world that there is no humanitarian crisis in Gaza thanks to Israeli benevolence. Like others who care about human beings and their fate, Gilbert and Holmes pleaded, in fact, for a ceasefire, but not yet. The U.S. blocked the Security Council from issuing a formal statement calling for a ceasefire. There was an official reason, which I'll quote. There was no indication that Hamas would abide by any agreement. Of all the justifications that have been offered for delighting in slaughter, this must rank among the most cynical. Of course, that was Bush and Rice. They're soon to be replaced by Barack Obama, who compassionately repeats that if missiles were falling where my two daughters sleep, I would do everything in order to stop that. He's talking about Israeli children. Beyond that, he's maintained his silence. A few days later, under intense international pressure, the U.S. did back a Security Council resolution which called for what they called a durable ceasefire. It passed 14-0, the United States abstaining. Israel and U.S. hawks were angered that the United States did not veto it, as the usual practice is. The abstention, however, does give Israel, if not a green, at least a yellow light to continue with the slaughter. The resolution called for stopping the flow of arms into Gaza, though not into Israel. In fact, vast quantities of arms continue to flow into Israel. On December 30th, 3 days after the latest invasion, the Pentagon released the fact that that the U.S. has commissioned several German ships to bring huge quantities of arms from Greece to Israel. Nobody knows what they are. They're labeled ammunition. I think it was 3,000 tons. The very few inquiries to the Pentagon about what's going on were answered with assurance that the arms would arrive too late to be used in the current assault against Gaza, which is probably correct. The Pentagon also said that they're not really intended for Israel, which is also probably correct, but rather they are being prepositioned in Israel. Israel is regarded as an offshore U.S. military base right in the periphery of the most important region of the world, the oil energy producing region. It's one of its contributions, one of its services to U.S. power. And the arms that are prepositioned there will be, if the Pentagon is accurate, not for Israeli violence, but for U.S. violence. So the next act of aggression in the region can make use of the arms stored there for the purpose. There's much more. If it ever gets reported, it will be, you can predict that it will be explained that this is to defend, to protect the free flow of oil and to assure stability. Those are the technical terms used for aggression and criminal violence, standardly. Well, going back to the UN resolution, did call for stopping the flow of arms into Gaza. In fact, but it also, quote, ensures the sustained reopening of the crossing points on the basis of the 2005 Agreement on Movement and Access between the Palestinian Authority and Israel. Well, what was the 2005 agreement? That determined that the crossings to Gaza would be operated on a continuous basis, that is, never closed, and that Israel would also allow the crossing of goods between Gaza and the West Bank, the two parts of Palestine. In January 2006, the U.S. and Israel abandoned the agreement. That's part of the punishment of Palestinians for voting the wrong way in a free election. We take democracy very seriously here. must be understood. There's a good deal of sober debate these days on what the attackers hope to achieve. I don't think that's very obscure when we take a brief look at recent history. Israel abandoned Gaza in September 2005. Why? Well, rational Israeli hardliners, like Ariel Sharon, as the patron saint of the settler movement, understood that it was senseless to subsidize a few thousand settlers to live illegally, of course, in the ruins of Gaza, protected by a large part of the IDF, the Israeli army, while they took over, used much of the land and the scarce resources of the territory, including its water.